Good afternoon. Thank you again for joining our session today, Navigating Your Career in a Virtual World, featuring industry roundtables with HR leaders. Top trending job markets is what we're going to be looking at today. We're excited to have you. A few things about this session. It is being recorded and event photography will take place throughout the event. If you do not want to appear on the screen or in the recording, please feel free to turn your camera off. We do ask that you remain on mute unless we're in the Q&A portion where you may be asked to unmute yourself a little bit later today. My name is Nicole Green. I am the Alumni Engagement Manager, and it's such a pleasure to be here with you all again today to serve in this career series. This is session 5 of 6, and we're just thrilled to have you. The series is designed to assist you in your career journey, whether you are working from home, possibly looking for new opportunities, seeking a transition in your career, or refreshing your skills to reinvent yourself. This series is definitely for you. I now want to take a moment to pass it to Dean Ledbetter. She's the Dean of Students and Alumni Affairs. She's also the Director for the Center for Women in Leadership, as well as Faculty for Organizational Theory and Management. Please welcome Dean Bernice Ledbetter.
Thank you, Nicole, so much. And thank you, everyone, for being here. We're just thrilled to have you here and spend this time together. Welcome back to all our alums. Thrilled to stay connected with you. I want to, at this time, I'd like to take a moment to share some information about how you may be able to participate in our current Graziadio School rankings. As many of you know, rankings provide students and alumni a unique advantage to be introduced to highly sought after opportunities. And so we have 2 rankings surveys going on right now. And I just want to take a second to tell you about them so that you have this in mind. So the first is Bloomberg Business Week. They are conducting their annual survey to gain firsthand insight into Graziadio's full-time MBA program. Eligible candidates for this survey include full-time MBA students who have graduated or are projected to graduate in December 2020 or April 2021 or August 2021. Additionally, full-time MBA alumni who have graduated between December 2012 all the way back to August 2015 or forward to 2015 are also eligible to take this survey. So if you fit the criteria that are interested in participating in this survey, please email pgbs.marketing@pepperdine.edu. We'll also put that address in the chat for those who are interested in participating in the Bloomberg Business Week ranking survey. Additionally, Forbes is also conducting its Best Business School Rankings Survey to assess the 5-year ROI of receiving a Graziadio full-time MBA. Eligible candidates are individuals who graduated from August 2015 to June 2016. So to make it into this year's survey, please check your inbox for a survey link that would have been emailed to you directly from Forbes. And again, for any questions, you can reach out to that same email address, pgbs.marketing@pepperdine.edu. That's in the chat box. And thank you to those who have participated, and we look forward to sharing more rankings opportunities in the future. And again, thank you so much for being with us. And now I'll turn it back over to Nicole. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean Ledbetter. Thank you for that information and sharing about rankings. There will be additional details shared out in our follow-up email after today's event. Okay, so today's speakers, we're excited. They're going to, first of all, we have a stellar panel, so you're in for a treat. Today's speakers are going to touch upon their personal journey and how Graziadio supported their career path, as well as offer insight on top job market trends and job search tips for their industry sector and company. I'm going to take a moment and explain or introduce each one. Brian Jenkins is a strategic HR leader with 15 years plus of focused experience in education, specializing in the areas of HR business partnerships, talent management, and organizational development. Brian has worked for a variety of companies, such as Hewlett-Packard, Texas Instruments, and WageWorks. His background includes significant international experience, having studied abroad in Singapore and having supported many international client groups with extensive travel. He has his HR people management experience in both direct and indirect through Matrix Global Partners. Brian currently serves as the senior HR leader at Amazon. Welcome, Brian. Next, we have Mary Price, who has an extensive experience in talent acquisition, change management and organizational development, talent development, diversity and inclusion, talent strategy, and leading teams within fast-paced, innovative, and hyper-growth environments. Mary's background in these areas allow her to make an impact across functions and solve problems, whether big or small, giving her a unique perspective to see around corners. She has been a part of 2 historic acquisitions, including Salesforce and Slack Technologies, the 2nd largest, and Microsoft and LinkedIn, the 3rd largest. Mary is a problem solver with a growth mindset and focuses on what's possible in her current role of Director of Business Recruiting at Slack. Today's final panelist is Melinda Heniza. She started and completed her fully employed MBA program while working at Mattel in entertainment marketing. She chose entrepreneurship and pivoted in her career into recruiting as a result of working with the Graziadio career counselors and finishing her MBA. Prior to Disney, Melinda was a career counselor, an adjunct instructor, and a corporate recruiter. In her current role as senior talent sourcer at the Walt Disney Company, she is part of the Talent Acquisition Center of Excellence that supports talent initiatives across the entire enterprise and throughout all business segments. There is no shortage of innovation at Disney, which keeps Melinda engaged in research projects and HR initiatives to find top talent. Fun fact, Melinda is also part of the Pepperdine Alumni Employee Resource Group within the Walt Disney Company. Again, please help me in welcoming our stellar panel, Brian, Mary, and Melinda that will share today.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Brian Jenkins. I am an MBA graduate from the full-time program. I graduated in 2010. Quick recap of my career and kind of what I've done since Pepperdine. So following graduation from Pepperdine, I actually went on to earn a 2nd graduate degree at Cornell University in Industrial and Labor Relations, which is just kind of a fancy word for HR. And upon graduation from Cornell, ended up signing with Hewlett-Packard, which brought me and my wife to the Dallas area. At HP, I went through a leadership rotation development program consisting of a couple different roles in different parts of HR, including performance management, HR business partnership, and an international expat assignment that I completed in Singapore based in talent management. Upon graduation from the program, came back and held a variety of different HR business partner roles in different divisions of Hewlett-Packard, and then ultimately ended up transitioning companies and moving to Texas Instruments, where I did 2 different HR roles, started leading my first team, and did a lot of international HR supporting our manufacturing plants abroad. Was at Texas Instruments for just under 3 years before transitioning and trying my hand at a smaller organization. Transitioned to a small company called WageWorks, where I got to be a part of building HR from the ground up, helped create their first HR business partner team, as well as build out their talent management and performance management strategies. They got acquired about 1.5 years ago or so, which put me onto the job market, and ultimately ended up signing with Amazon. So in my current role with Amazon, I've been with Amazon for just over 1 year now, based in the Dallas area. I lead HR for a couple of our different facilities out here, totaling about 30 or so HR team members. And we operate in the fulfillment side of Amazon. So this is massive warehouse distribution centers, focused on customer obsession to get your Amazon packages to you as fast as possible. So that's kind of my high level, based in Dallas, been here for the last 10 years. And with that, we'll transition into some job tips. Next slide, please. So a massive part of not only my role, but of leaders at Amazon's role is that talent acquisition and getting the right people in our roles is incredibly challenging. And just to put a little bit of kind of some data points behind this, when I joined Hewlett Packard coming out of school, Hewlett Packard had 350,000 employees, and at one point we had 8,000 openings. And that was this crisis, crucible moment for Hewlett Packard when we were trying to figure out how we would ever be able to fill 8,000 roles. And when I look at the Amazon numbers in that same space, it's quite daunting. We are now over 1.4 million employees. And as of this morning, have more than 60,000 openings at the company. And so I'd say God bless our recruiting teams for trying to manage the workload that comes with that. But really, if we find as leaders here that if we want to get top talent, that a lot of that falls onto ourselves, right? Where we go and actively utilize LinkedIn and professional networking to try to find good talent for our spaces and our client groups. And so when I look at my interactions that I'm having with individuals, and I'm trying to understand, is this person a good fit? Will they be top talent? These are some of the things that I personally look for. I'll make the initial disclaimer that these are some of my kind of personal and subjective observations, right? Not necessarily the representative of Amazon as a company. So the first one I'd like to share, especially in the world of HR, is does this person have strong communication skills? Are they able to speak articulately? Are they able to make eye contact? Do they have good awareness? Are they able to use an executive summary format when they're telling their stories? If you're asking them a specific question, are you getting a specific answer back? Are they engaging in their interaction style? It's very much especially when you think of the role of an HR business partner or HR generalist in our world, that is an absolutely critical skill set. And there's a number of different things you can do to work on that. The best experience I have in helping others develop in that space is really encouraging people to partner with someone who is known for being good in that space, right? What does it look like in terms of body language? Are people smiling? Are people making eye contact? And are you intentionally communicating what it is that you're trying to showcase in those interactions? So the next space is, when I'm, I do a number of different interviews at different levels of career. And I'm always trying to understand how well does someone really know their space. So as an example, if I am interviewing someone in operations, even if they have very limited experience, and this is something that they studied in school, I want to know things around, how much of lean do they understand? How much of Kaizen principles are they familiar with? Have they ever been in a manufacturing plant setting, and what does that look like? Have they done any of the have they studied any leading companies in this space, and how, I'm looking for data points on, do I have confidence that this person is set in this area and has done preparation and focused development in their particular space. Moving on to the third one, data and analytics is massive for Amazon. There are a number of individuals I've interviewed, and they'll say something like, I'm not really that big of a numbers person. And I mean, immediately that makes a hill that is difficult to overcome, particularly in a company like Amazon, where we have a metric and a scorecard for just about everything. And so we absolutely, it's easy to say that there's different levels within data metrics and analytics, but at a minimum, are people confident in Excel, and can people do basic analytics and use data to help support their opinions and their various initiatives? Moving on to the fourth one, do you fit with the organization's culture? Just even looking at the companies that we have here speaking to you today, I would feel very confident in saying that the culture of Amazon is likely very different than the culture of Disney, which would be very different than a culture of American Airlines, which would be very different than cultures of a Microsoft. And ensuring that a candidate knows what those cultural elements are, and that why they think they would be a good fit with that is absolutely something that's important. Another thing when you look at when we are evaluating candidates, there is a large volume of information that comes across every single one of my team members' desks or inbox over the course of a day. And one of the things I look for is a person OCD organized. And a lot of different people can have different approaches as to how they manage it and what that looks like. But if you're going to receive 500 emails a day and who knows how many chimes or Slack messages or phone calls and meetings, and you're triple booked across the day, how do you understand what you need to be on top of and how do you keep it all organized? It's also something that we evaluate in terms of potential, right? So at Amazon, we absolutely hire not only for the original job, but also with the idea of we're asking ourselves a question, can we see this person taking on additional scope and responsibility in the near-term future? And one of those elements is this person highly organized and using technology to help in that space? Lastly, Grit. If those of you who aren't familiar with the term, it's a fantastic book by Angela Duckworth. Broadly speaking, at many of these large companies on a daily basis, you have easily 2 or 3 times the amount of work that you can actually accomplish. And one of the things that makes standout performers in our environment is really just, how effectively is someone able to come back from a setback and really drive productivity in terms of what's being accomplished on a day in, day out basis. Through the course of my now 15 plus years, right, in career, school, education, and various levels of human resources, I've never met a top performing leader at any of the levels that was working very basic 40-hour weeks and not grinding in a kind of an achiever type of mentality. It's possible, I guess, that there are organizations where maybe that is not quite as focused upon, but at least everyone I've ever seen, when you look at what is on the plates of leaders and what we look at in terms of people who would be future big leaders, grit is absolutely one of the characteristics that stands out. So with that, I wanted to transition and include one more slide in here. I've worked with a number of different individuals on job searches, and I've done that for people graduating out of an undergrad or grad type of program. But I've also done it with various levels of executives across different countries, different industries. And I really find that this slide helps out a lot in terms of being able to have a framework that people model in. And I noticed that one of the biggest mistakes I see people do when they're in a job search or trying to figure out what a post-school placement is going to be is that there is a disproportionate amount of time that is spent on formal applications, right? So people are on job boards and applying to roles and doing that over and over and over and not really investing time in the other 3 categories here on the slide. And so the challenge with that is a number of companies, when they're posting roles, many of those roles that are posted are actually already spoken for, right? The leaders in the various positions through networking have found and talked to the people that they would like to select for the roles. And the role that you're seeing posted is maybe just a formality or a policy within that company, and that not all of those posted positions are open and actively sourcing for new candidates. And so the basic talk track I give with people is it's really important to understand from a strategic perspective, what industry would you like to be in? What is your target company list? I try to encourage people to not have too few, not have too many. I find that somewhere between 10 and 25 is usually the ideal. And specifically in the geographies that you're open to living in, do they have the corporate functions that you are wanting to be a part of? And are you investing time once you've listed those companies out to really understand those companies at a deeper level, so that when you do get to interact with people from those organizations, that they are impressed by you, that where they have the opportunity to be able to put you in front of a person that gives you the potential opportunity in your interaction with them, have you convinced them that you really would be a great fit in this space? Once you have a target company list, being able to do targeted strategic networking with people that work in those organizations is key. This can be alumni. Another piece of this can be through getting the LinkedIn premium subscription, right? That is the best return on investment I think that you could make in any type of job search, to be able to go through and do filtered searches for people who live in specific geographies, work in certain companies, and ideally also went to similar universities. And so all of that supported by an ongoing investment in career development, so that you're always investing in your various knowledge, skills, and abilities that make you a standout in your space. High level, that would be my advice. Happy to connect with anyone. And with that, I'll transition it over to Mary, I believe is the next presenter.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mary Price, and as Nicole mentioned before, I lead business recruiting at Slack. Slack is a technology company that is about 7 years old, and we, as mentioned in my bio, are currently going through an acquisition, which is incredibly exciting and tons to learn and work through. I'll give a quick overview on the things that I've done since graduation. So when I was in the MSOD program, I was working for Apple at the time. I was a recruiter. I really wanted to just develop myself. I had grown a lot at the company, but I thought it was really important to invest in my skills, which I think each of you are doing today by attending events like this, and I commend you for that. And I, found myself in a place where I thought, geez, I really am interested in this OD stuff, and I want to make a difference in helping people grow and develop and organizations evolve. And so I took a risk and I left Apple. I joined JetBlue, the airline. They have an organizational effectiveness department. And I learned a lot in that time. I was only there for a short time. Mainly because honestly, growing up in tech, I think I just really knew that my heart was in that space, and making a transition to an airline was really, really different. The culture was different. Nothing wrong with JetBlue. I just thought to myself, long-term alignment for me is probably not doing this work holistically, but going back into an industry that I really do love. And so found myself getting contacted by former Apple colleagues that had since joined LinkedIn. Went to LinkedIn. I was in a leadership role at Apple and at JetBlue, but went into an individual contributor role at LinkedIn, honestly, just to get in. I went back into recruiting. I was so excited about LinkedIn's culture and the people and the mission and the vision that I said, this is, a step that may not look like it's up and to the right, but I think will benefit me long-term. And it really did. And so I was a recruiter again, hadn't been a recruiter in a couple of years. Soon after was promoted to a leadership position because of the growth of the company and several changes, found my way back into a leadership role, sort of by accident. Wasn't trying to do that. I had just found out I was pregnant with my second child and thought, gosh, I don't know if I want to do this, but did it and never looked back. Over the years at LinkedIn, continued to have different responsibilities across recruiting, including leading a global recruiting team in our LATAM business. And then ended up getting to the point where I thought, gosh, I need to stretch myself again. Need to go for that different type of career opportunity, something that is more challenging at this stage in my career. Got an email on LinkedIn from Slack, followed up, and here I am leading our global business recruiting team, which includes G&A functions, which are the corporate functions, and the sales team. And it's been a wild ride, a series of several lessons and learnings along the way, which I'm so grateful for. So I am going to take a slightly different approach than what Brian did as I walk you through my next slides and we talk through sort of market trends. So here are some of the trends that I'm seeing companies follow. So I'm taking it from more the company perspective. So I am seeing a huge, and I don't even know if it's a trend at this point, but a focus on diversity. Diversity from the perspective of, of course, ethnicity and cultural backgrounds, but also diversity of thought, diversity of experience, There are so many different ways to diversify your company and your team. And I'm seeing a laser focus on that right now. Now, a lot of people think, diversity is just a numbers game. It's definitely not. There is a huge opportunity for companies to invest in talent in communities that they may not have before. And I think part of any company's diversity strategy is not about extracting talent from within a specific community or group, whether it be Hispanic, Black, LGBTQ, but really investing in those communities as well. And so while I was at LinkedIn, and we did a lot of work in the community across different groups to help build skills. And so I think that's an opportunity that a lot of companies have. And I see a lot of companies starting to do that. At Slack, we do the same. And I know a host of other companies that do as well. So diversity is something that a lot of companies are focused on. So I would say if you're trying to break into a different type of industry or an organization, I would get curious about it. We'll talk through that on my next slides, but I think your diversity is something to be excited about as well, whatever that might be, whether it's on the experience side or other factors. Other trends that we're seeing in terms of the job market, clearly with the pandemic, flexibility. It has forced the notion that remote work is not a bad thing. And I can confidently say it is not a bad thing. For the last 13 years of my career, 90% of that time has been spent in my home office working remotely. And so I'm actually really grateful for this change and the fact that being remote has now been normalized. I also realize that that is not necessarily a positive thing for some people or even some industries. My sister-in-law actually runs HR for a commodities company, and we've had interesting conversations about this because for her, outsourcing the work across the team would actually mean people lose their jobs in the States, and that they can get cheaper, workforce elsewhere. However, in tech, it's created all kinds of opportunities for us to hire talent where the talent is versus hiring in a hub-based approach, which oftentimes is more costly and less diverse. So a lot of companies are offering much more flex. And I think that's awesome because it also creates a ton of opportunities for you in your career to consider companies that you may have written off before because you don't live in San Francisco or New York or, wherever, California. So I think that the flexibility is here to stay. I think that technologies like Slack, like Teams, and a host of others, Zoom obviously, are really enabling people to continue to be successful. And so when it comes to flexibility, I would say be open-minded because you never know what kind of an opportunity could come your way. And then of course, companies are consistently looking for quality. And Brian did a really nice job of highlighting a ton of the, I guess I would say, competencies that, companies look for, not just Amazon, right? But just like strong work ethic, collaborative mindset, problem solvers, get it done. That's the kind of people I think that, really succeed, that go above and beyond and don't just do the baseline. On the quality front, from a hiring manager perspective, I'm always encouraging hiring managers to not just hire for today or 6 months from now, but really think about 18 months from now. How is your business going to look different, be different, need to operate different? What are the skills that you will need at that time that, you may or may not need today, but are going to be important in terms of the way that your company is growing and scaling. So those are some of the trends that I'm seeing from a company perspective. We can go to the next slide. In terms of job search tips, so LinkedIn, as a former alumni, I learned a ton while I worked there about the platform and the power of the platform. So I would definitely start there, and I know I put it third here, but I would put it first, is investing in your LinkedIn profile. I think when LinkedIn first came out, it was the era of, social networking platforms. We had MySpace back then, and then Facebook and LinkedIn. And people were hesitant to often invest in their LinkedIn profile or update it for fear of, oh my gosh, my colleagues, my boss are going to see I'm on LinkedIn and think I'm looking for a job. I would encourage, if you have those thoughts, you to move away from that, because LinkedIn truly is your professional profile of record. And they have added a ton of new features to enable your own professional brand. And so things like you can post a video bio. Hi, my name is Mary Price. I love XYZ. I am known for these things. I love to drive impact through fill in the blank. And so you can do that. And I think it's such a great thing to do, because you give people a sense of who you are, how you communicate, your vibe, what is important to you. There are a lot of other features on LinkedIn. You can post articles, you can engage as a mentor to people. There's a lot. So I would really invest in that. Don't be afraid. It's your professional brand. That's your space that you own, and it helps you get noticed and find new opportunities. I've actually seen some videos go viral of people that maybe recently graduated from college, and they posted a great video, and next thing you know, there's thousands of people saying, we got to get her, we should hire her, we should talk to her. So I would have fun with that and invest in it. The second thing is, starting at the top, start with brands that you love. You know, I think that when you just think about your life and how you're spending your time, why not work with a brand that you love, and that inspires you and that you connect with? Because in my personal experience, I've always done that. And I have found that my feeling of belonging and engagement was always exponentially higher. And I did have, a shorter stint at another company in another industry where I loved the brand, but I realized this industry is not for me. So I would definitely start with brands, industries that you love, that you feel really connected to, especially from a mission, vision, purpose perspective. And you'll often find that your personal values align. And I think that's super important. And then lastly, explore who you know. So once you are on LinkedIn, you've updated your profile, you've got your list of brands and companies that you love, products that you use, explore who you know that works at those companies. And you'll find that you may know first degree connections, and you may have some second degree connections that you can get introduced to. And I would ask for time. And try to understand a little bit more about what it's like to work at that company. Are they willing to introduce you to the hiring manager for a role that you found that's open there? And start that way. When I think back to most of the jobs that I've gotten in my career, it always started with someone that I knew that helped open up the door for a conversation. And so I wouldn't minimize that. I think that it usually is the best way to just get a conversation going, and then you never know what can happen from there. So those are my tips for now.
Okay, great. So let me start over from the beginning. So I'm currently a senior talent sourcer over at the Walt Disney Company, and there it's a really different sort of a role from when I started. I want to say that when I first started, sourcing was considered more of a support function for recruiting. And over time, it's really evolved into more of a strategy and consultancy sort of a role. And I'll explain that a little bit further when I'm going through my job tips and trends, because it really is a reflection of kind of what I deal with on a day-to-day basis. But again, just to give you a little bit of an overview of my background and where I came from. So after undergrad, I was actually really interested in getting involved in the entertainment industry. And I didn't know quite what that looked like yet. Similar to what Mary had mentioned, I knew there were certain brands that I wanted to be a part of, that I had, personal connection to. So that was like my North Star at the start of my career. And then fast forward into, a few years into my career, I realized that I needed to pivot because I wasn't getting the fulfillment that I thought I would working within the entertainment industry. And I was actually starting to get more curious about business and the business side of entertainment. And that actually led me over to Mattel because at the time they were standing up an entertainment division to kind of create content to support their portfolio of toy brands. So I thought that was really interesting. I started out there within a marketing, licensing, and entertainment kind of three-headed monster sort of a function, but it was a great learning experience in terms of just, understanding where the connections are when it comes to consumer products, when it comes to entertainment, when it comes to strategy and business and all of this. And then I started to, see that in order to move up in that organization, because it was a corporate environment, that you needed to get an advanced degree. And so that led me over to Pepperdine, which was right down the street from the Mattel campus. So it was actually the fully employed program that I was a part of, and it worked out well with my schedule because at the time I lived in the Valley, and so I would go to my classes right after work. I would avoid all the rush hour traffic going home, and get my education at the same time. So and it also made the time fly by so much quicker, and because it was a fully employed program, I got to network with so many different people from all the different industries outside of my own, and hear about so many different sorts of perspectives and create a really great network. And it was also during that time where I started to really kind of inwardly focus on, is this really the direction I want to go in? Is there anything else that might be better suited for me? And that was actually when I uncovered recruiting. So I didn't ever think of recruiting at all, but I did, kind of, in the back of my mind, really feel fulfilled with training and development of interns and things like that I was doing at Mattel. And so I did come to this crossroads at Mattel where, I wasn't being allowed to progress the way I thought I was. And that was kind of a turning point for me that, a career counselor at Pepperdine actually helped steer me through that weird transition. So long story short, I was able to kind of pivot at that point and really put to use what I learned from the entertainment side and translate that into working with students as a career counselor and then eventually an instructor. And then I started working at different staffing agencies focused on the creative space. And that's where I kind of met a lot of different recruiters from all over the place as well, started building my network there. And one of those recruiters is actually who brought me into Disney. So just so those networks, they're great for finding opportunities, and you never know when one of those coworkers or colleagues or somebody that you ran across somewhere along the way will come back and remember you and want to bring you onto their team. So that's exactly what happened. That was 6 years ago now, and here I am at Disney, and I'm going to tell you exactly what's been going on there lately, just based on kind of the job trends that I'm seeing. So if you can move on to the next slide, I can jump right into that. Awesome. So digital transformation, as we all know, during COVID, everything changed. Everything was accelerated in terms of, making that jump over to digital. And when it comes to media and entertainment, I'm sure we all kind of felt the effects of that. We're looking for new ways to stay connected to not only our favorite shows and, entertainment options, but also, people in general. So everything had to, quickly make this shift. And so business models changed, operations changed. And with that, either new roles came about or new roles kind of came together. So I'll talk a little bit more about that on the convergence piece. But as far as the digital transformation goes, you see in industries now where, jobs are coming up on job boards that didn't exist a year ago, 2 years ago. So some of those could take the form of, data and analytics professionals or technologists that are familiar with how streaming works, or converting over, sites to be capable of, a high volume of e-commerce transactions. And then another huge one has definitely been a shift in ad sales. So traditional ad sales is no longer at this point. Now it's all about, kind of a lot of different measurements, programmatic, different ways of measuring impressions and ROI when it comes to different campaigns. And then consumer insights, I think that one's something that has also shifted during this digital transformation time, because now we're getting more data points from our consumers, understanding what their new behaviors are, understanding what's working and what's not working in terms of, their consumption or their, the patterns in how they consume, content, or how they shop, or whatever the case may be. We now have data points for all of that. So there are teams now that are being stood up to understand what those insights are, so that companies are better informed going forward to continue to innovate or to make changes accordingly, so that they can continue to grow their business or, recoup some of the things that they lost through traditional channels. So on to convergence. Given that the subject matter for this particular session was, more entertainment and media focused, I thought it would be great to kind of tie that in to convergence in general. So on the tech side of things, as I mentioned before, streaming platforms have kind of been our saving grace during this time of being stuck in-house. So whether that's, for, the adult audience or kids or, everyone, all together, there's a lot of convergence that's happened there. We see it now in, these features on streaming platforms where you can do group watch parties, things like that. And while that's a great feature for those that are not, tech savvy to understand, what happens in the background there, that probably took teams and teams of engineers to create that technology, put it together, and make it a simple little button, that you can see there when you press play. So there's a lot of different jobs that are going into, kind of developing this new technology that's here to kind of make life and make that experience a lot easier for us going forward. And then just in general on the experience front, we've seen a huge shift also in the type of content that is out there. We all saw kind of, Quibi rise up and then quickly fall because no one's commuting anymore. So no one wants those quick little bites of content anymore. And so, what happened to all of those content creators, all those shows that were destined for that? They've now had to pivot to social, or, they've been absorbed and taken, into long form content, things like that. So there's lots of different things that are happening within the entertainment and media space. It's hard to kind of, get all that together and understand it. But I think an easy way to kind of stay on top of that is to Mary and Brian's points earlier, find the ones that interest you and create alerts, whether it's news alerts, job alerts, whatever it is, so that the information comes to you and you're not overloaded. And then it's also kind of focused and prioritized to the companies or to the brands that you really care about the most and that you really want to keep on your radar. And then for the third one, virtual workflows, I think this one kind of ties into everything that I just mentioned, but also moving forward, just upskilling yourself, because now a lot of companies are opening the doors to remote opportunities. It's, it's going to be very, very significant to have that as part of your skill set nowadays. So there's the days of, pulling the, oh, I'm not tech savvy card, that's not going to fly anymore in this world, unfortunately. So whether that's, project management tools or, collaboration tools, whatever it is that you are not so comfortable with, get comfortable with them, because going forward, you're likely going to need to be very versed in a lot of those tools. And then also, just understanding the remote workflow, being able to be flexible, like what Mary had mentioned in her, flexibility point. That is something that's going to remain, whether we go back to normal or not. There's going to be teams that are, regionally dispersed or, working in multiple time zones. So really trying to understand and know how to work in those environments, and then also share your best practices and how to do that successfully. I think in job interviews or, just as you're networking, I think that's something that hiring leaders are going to look for is, are you able to work with teams that are regionally dispersed, whether that's location, time zone, whatever the case may be. I think that's going to be something that will help push you a little bit further in your job search. Experience and that understanding of what it means like to be successful in a virtual work environment. Go on to the next slide and I'll go a little bit further into my tips. So again, this kind of echoes what Mary was saying about, investing in your LinkedIn profile. I would take it the next step further in terms of curation. We all know what curate means. We like that ourselves in our personal, our personal purchases or things that, we like custom for us. Recruiters love the same thing. Like, we want it to be as easy as possible to find you, so that we can put you in the roles that match perfectly with your skills and your background and your expertise. And so the more you kind of infuse your profile with a lot of those key skill sets, a lot of those, KPIs, we love to use that word in business school, right? Key performance indicators, little nuggets and job descriptions that you're seeing over and over, the job that you're kind of trying to position yourself for. Those are the things that you should have peppered into your profile. And then also tell your story. A lot of the times I'll read somebody's summary, and for me, that will sell them to me, even if I thought maybe their background was, maybe they don't have the years of experience that I'm looking for, but I read in their summary how passionate they are about this space, or, what it means to them to kind of continue to develop, in a certain area. That sort of thing sets you apart because it's your unique story, and it's what makes you a little bit different from others. And I know Brian had mentioned, culture fit. Disney is a different culture for sure than Amazon. So I hear a lot from my peers and from my hiring leaders that there's a certain type of Disney person that would, be successful here and that would do well here. And the lines in somebody's summary or profile, what that is. There's a lot of different nuances when it comes to kind of just sharing your story and having that, parallel what it is that you're looking for. I mean, Disney's a storytelling company, so of course, that matters to us, and that can, sometimes even overshadow, the lack of, experience that you have in a certain area if we know that you have another understanding deeper than, just your work experience. And then marketing your expertise. So I'm alluding to this in a little bit different way than, just your typical marketing. I mean, be more active in what you do online. I know it's hard for some people, maybe if you're not comfortable, posting or commenting or things like that. But so maybe it's a more subtle thing, like following different leaders, especially within the industry that you're interested in. Follow them, read what they post and make comments, or, like it, and then have it, appear in your network, because when you like something or when you share something, even if it's not your own, your name will pop up in all of your connections networks. So that's another kind of subtle way to kind of market that you're staying on top of your industry, you're staying on top of what's going on, and you're sharing that with your network. So that's another kind of subtle way for you to kind of make it on people's radar. Sometimes I'll see my LinkedIn feed and I'll see a name of somebody that, maybe I haven't thought of in years, but maybe they, reposted something. And I'll think of them, and then I'll, see what they're up to. And then I go down this rabbit hole of like, oh my gosh, so that's what they've been up to since the last time I heard from them. That might actually work out for something that I know is coming, down the path as far as a role or a team that I'm working on later. So you never know when those subtle things that you do in terms of online activity will make their way to the right person at the right time. So why not just go ahead and do it? And then another thing that's a little bit different, but there's lots of tools out there now to do this, is to create a website. Even if you're not a creative person, you're going to a business school. I'm sure you've studied multiple business cases at this point, and you've probably experienced them yourselves throughout your career. What was that business case that you talk about all the time in your job interviews? Put that into a website format and make it something that you share with hiring leaders, or when you're trying to interview, add it to your resume, even as a link. Because I can tell you there's nothing more impressive to me than somebody who's not a creative person that has a link to their own website that, showcases their business cases. I'm blown away by that. I have somebody right now that is interviewing for a strategist role, and the strategist you wouldn't think would have, their own website, but she has multiple business cases on her website of campaigns that she was a part of. And even though she didn't do the creative part of it, she would walk through her strategy ideas and kind of, the performance of the campaigns that she worked on, and just like a business case, what the outcomes were. So things like that, get creative with what you can do to market yourself. And then finally, activate your search. So beyond just applying for job after job on job boards, join a new organization, participate in webinars like this, volunteer to be a panelist. There's just different ways to get yourself out there and expand your network. And you can't do that by just applying to job after job after job. And then the first thing that I do now for everything that I do, not just job searching, but everything that I work on, research. I can't stress enough how much you can rise to the top of a hiring slate when you know something or can teach, the hiring leader something about their industry or their category. That's the best way to make an impression on somebody when you're doing an interview or when you're, meeting somebody for the first time, is if you teach them something they don't already know. Like, that's a guaranteed way to stick out from the rest of the people that you're speed networking with or, interviewing with, whatever the case may be. If you can bring something to the table that's new and that's different, even if it's not new information, maybe a different take or a perspective that maybe somebody hasn't thought of before, it's a great way to kind of make that impression and resonate and stand out from the crowd. So I know we are at the 12:50 mark, so I will end it there, and hopefully I can help you guys with any other questions.
Such great content. Thank you for that. Thank you, Melinda. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Brian. The chat is exploding with comments. I know the feedback from LinkedIn and just details that you all have been sharing have been very, very great. Practical, tangible nuggets for folks to walk away with. I do want to mention that the presentation and the recording will be shared out, so that's great. And filter in some questions. So some questions did come in the chat. I know all three of you kind of touched on how you've had to pivot things in regards to COVID. So Genevieve had a more specific question. How has COVID affected the HR space? Are there certain areas that were impacted worse than others? I don't know if any of you want to speak to that a little bit more.
I'm happy to speak to it as a start. So in terms of affecting the HR space, I think that it absolutely challenged all people teams to think about how they're operating differently. So for many companies, they had never had a remote work environment, and overnight they had to figure that out, which took an incredible amount of coordination, time, problem solving, constantly switching gears. As soon as you solve one problem, there's another big rock right behind it that you've got to figure out. And then in some cases, so I was actually at LinkedIn when everything shut down and we were going through a huge contraction. We stopped hiring. There was a lot of implications to that. There were teams that there was actually a massive layoff that the CEO actually posted about, where they laid off about 1,000 salespeople and recruiters. And so I think those types of changes create a host of problems to solve. And then on the recruiting side, interestingly, I then went to Slack in April. So March, the world is shutting down. April, the world is shutting down, but I'm starting a new job thinking, am I crazy for doing this? And I go to Slack and it is like nonstop growth. Everyone needs our tool. We've had the most users ever in the history of ever. And it was just, it felt like a bubble. It felt like this, I felt guilty in some ways, some people were losing their jobs and here we're growing and we can't hire fast enough. So I think that depending on where you were at that time, your people teams challenges looked differently. On one hand, we were contracting, on the other hand, we were expanding. So just an interesting time. And I feel lucky that I was able to learn from both of those experiences.
Yeah, I'll share a little bit. So Amazon was affected in different ways across the pandemic based upon what part of our company we were a part of. So we have parts of Amazon that are very, tech and corporate centric, that we're very easily able to pivot to remote and work from home environments, as that, we had a lot of that technology and kind of precedent in place. However, in the part of Amazon that I work in the world of Amazon fulfillment, we fall very directly into the essential worker category, and our massive network of buildings and distribution, while we utilize a lot of robotics and automation and some leading technology in those spaces, is still very much a people-driven operation. And so very quickly, Amazon instilled more than 150 different policies and processes and practices to make our buildings as safe as possible, which included everything from on-site screening as well as vaccine distribution at this point now within our various facilities. A lot of people think of Amazon as the place where you go to get your fun shoes or book or clothing item or whatever. But we also are a leading provider to many of our nation's first responders and hospitals and police stations and fire stations for just all types of various things that that Amazon supplies from an e-commerce platform standpoint. And similar to Mary, in a sense that while there were many different industries that were hurt by the pandemic and went through large scale layoffs or reductions and contractions in business models like hospitality and airline, cruise industries, et cetera. 2020 from a business and growth perspective was pretty unbelievable for Amazon. In just the year 2020, I think we added almost 500,000 employees to Amazon and experienced pretty massive growth, right, from an e-commerce perspective. And so, one of our biggest challenges as Amazon leaders is not only finding enough good people, but there are so many open opportunities within the world of Amazon. It's hard to keep the good people on your team, just because there is, even just within my world of HR, I looked at it this morning. We had 2,800 open posted HR positions just within just the United States, which is hard to really fathom from a talent need perspective. And so, I think the way that COVID has affected HR, differs drastically, right? If you were an HR leader at a place like, Carnival Cruise Lines or Royal Caribbean or an American Airlines, your challenges you were being faced with were very dramatically different than something that an Amazon, a Slack, a Zoom, Microsoft Teams, right, might be going through.
Thank you for that, Brian. Thank you, Mary. I know we are just about out of time. I wanted to pause and see if Melinda, if you had a short answer for this question. I know there are questions in the chat. We apologize. What I can do is filter the questions to the panelists after this session and send out some responses to those that had specific questions. But Melinda, did you have any response real quick?
Yeah, just real quick. Disney was able to kind of shift gears fairly quickly, and we had to, obviously, like everyone said, hospitality was quickly, shut down and indefinitely. We did not know what was going to happen. And so our HR people went to work immediately to try and not only make the furlough process as smooth as possible for a huge population of our employees. So in doing that, we shifted a lot of our HR people who are not recruiting at the time or hiring anybody to become an employee resource center. And so that employee resource center really acted as, a guide through this tumultuous time to really steer them into, whether that was the unemployment process and filing for insurance and things like that, or just to be able to offer resources when it came to, external resources that they could use, whether it was, for food assistance or, even mental health care, things like that. We were able to kind of help in that regard. And then to Mary's point, things were growing in other areas. Since Disney obviously is a huge media conglomerate, our Disney Plus division was just exploding at the time, because before COVID, we had already planned for international growth the year of 2020. And so that continued on. And if anything, it actually saved a lot of people from the furlough situation because we were able to transition a lot of roles that were going to go to furlough and repurpose them for people to support these expansion efforts when it came to global expansion for Disney Plus and other entities that had to shift very quickly to the digital space. So that's my quick answer to how we navigated through COVID, but happy to answer additional questions that people may have put in the chat following this session.
Great, thank you so much for that. Thanks, everyone.